I found the foreclosure notice wedged between my father's seed catalogues like a death sentence wrapped in legal jargon. 20 years of back-breaking work on this farm, and this is how I find out my parents are about to lose everything. My name is Rachel, and I've been played for a fool my entire adult life. But let me back up. 3 hours earlier, I was elbow-deep in engine grease, fixing the tractor that should have been replaced a decade ago. The dinner bell clanged across the fields, Mom's signal that meant drop everything and come running. I wiped my hands on my jeans and jogged toward the farmhouse, already dreading whatever family drama awaited. Knox's BMW sat in the driveway like a middle finger to everything our family supposedly stood for. My younger brother had driven up from the city again, probably needing another bailout. "There she is!" Dad boomed as I walked into the kitchen. "Our little grease monkey." I forced a smile. At 33, I was hardly little, and after 2 decades of keeping this place running, I deserved better than condescending nicknames. Knox looked up from his phone, designer shirt spotless despite being on a working farm. "Hey, sis, still playing in the dirt, I see." "Someone has to." I grabbed a beer from the fridge. "How's the consulting business?" "Booming. Just landed another client in Chicago." "Dad, tell her about the expansion plans." Mom set a platter of fried chicken on the table, beaming at Knox like he'd just announced he'd cured cancer. "Your brother's got such vision, Rachel. He's going to modernize everything." "Modernize what, exactly?" I slid into my usual chair, the one with the wobbly leg that nobody ever bothered fixing. Dad leaned forward, eyes bright with excitement. "Knox thinks we should pivot to organic certification, premium pricing, direct-to-consumer sales. He's got connections with restaurants in the city." I nearly choked on my beer. "Organic certification takes 3 years minimum, and the startup costs, that's where the business loan comes in," Knox interrupted, cutting into his chicken. "I've already talked to some investors." "What business loan?" The table went quiet. Mom suddenly became very interested in passing the mashed potatoes. Dad cleared his throat. "Nothing for you to worry about, sweetheart. Knox and I have it handled." That phrase, "nothing for you to worry about," had been the soundtrack of my life. Every major decision, every financial discussion, every plan for the farm's future happened without me. I was good enough to fix the equipment and manage the harvest, but not good enough to sit at the grown-ups' table. "I've been working this land for 20 years," I said carefully. "Maybe I should know what's happening with it." Knox laughed. "Rachel, no offense, but you think small. This is about taking the farm to the next level. Dad needs someone with real business experience." "Real business experience." I set down my fork. "You mean, like, the time you convinced Dad to invest in that cryptocurrency scheme? Or when you started that drop-shipping company that lasted 3 months? Those were learning experiences. That cost us $30,000. Rachel." Mom's voice carried a warning. "Your brother is trying to help." Help. Right. Knox's version of help usually involved other people's money and zero accountability when things went sideways. The conversation moved on to safer topics: the weather, the county fair, anything that didn't require acknowledging the elephant in the room. I excused myself early, claiming I needed to check on the irrigation system, but instead of heading to the fields, I found myself in Dad's office, looking for something I couldn't name. The desk was cluttered with bills, equipment manuals, and stacks of mail. Most of it looked routine, until I spotted an envelope from First National Bank, partially hidden under a John Deere catalogue. My hands shook as I pulled out the letter. The words blurred together at first, then snapped into focus with devastating clarity. Notice of default, failure to make payments, acceleration of debt, foreclosure proceedings. The amount owed made my stomach drop. $250,000. The farm, our family's farm for 4 generations, was collateral for a $250,000 loan I'd never heard of. I sank into Dad's chair, the letter trembling in my hands. All those mysterious phone calls he'd been taking in private. The way Mom changed the subject whenever I asked about the new equipment Knox kept mentioning. The stack of unopened mail that seemed to grow every week. They'd mortgaged everything, and from the dates on the paperwork, they'd been hiding it for months. The worst part? I could already guess where the money had gone. Knox's new car, his downtown apartment, his girlfriend's Instagram-worthy lifestyle, all of it funded by the land I'd poured my life into. I heard footsteps in the hallway and quickly shoved the letter back under the catalogue. But as I sat there in the dark, one thought echoed in my mind. If they were willing to risk everything for Knox's dreams, what exactly did that make me worth? I called Natalie at 7 in the morning, knowing she'd already be at her law office with her first cup of coffee. "Rachel, what's wrong? You sound like hell." "I need you to look into something for me. Quietly." I paced around my kitchen, the foreclosure notice spread across the table like evidence at a crime scene. "My parents took out a loan against the farm, a big one." "How big?" $250,000. Natalie whistled low. "Jesus. When? That's what I need you to find out. Can you pull the records?" "Give me 2 hours." Those 2 hours felt like 2 years. I tried to work, checked the irrigation lines, fed the chickens, anything to keep my hands busy. But my mind kept circling back to that number. $250,000, more money than I'd seen in my entire life. Gone. Natalie called back at 9:30 sharp. "Rachel, you need to sit down." "I'm sitting." I wasn't, but close enough. The mortgage was filed 8 months ago. The money was transferred to 3 different accounts, 1 in your father's name, 2 in Knox's. My grip tightened on the phone. "How much went to Knox?" "About 60%. The rest went to farm equipment purchases and—" "Rachel, there's more. They've missed the last 3 payments. The bank's already started foreclosure proceedings." The kitchen spun around me. I grabbed the counter for support. "How long do we have?" 4 weeks. Maybe 5 if they file an extension." 4 weeks. 28 days to watch everything I'd built crumble because my parents decided my brother's lifestyle was more important than our family's legacy. "There's something else," Natalie continued. "The loan application lists Knox as the farm's heir and primary beneficiary. Your name isn't mentioned anywhere." Of course it wasn't. I hung up and drove straight to the house. Mom was in the garden, deadheading roses like the world wasn't ending. "Mom, we need to talk." She looked up, shading her eyes against the sun. "About what, honey?" I pulled the foreclosure notice from my back pocket. "About this." Her face went white. The pruning shears slipped from her hands. "Where did you get that?" "Dad's office. Were you ever planning to tell me?" Mom straightened, brushing dirt from her knees. "Rachel, this is complicated." "No, it's not. You mortgaged the farm to pay for Knox's life. It's pretty simple." "You don't understand the full situation." "Then explain it to me." She walked toward the house, and I followed. In the kitchen, she poured herself a glass of sweet tea with shaking hands. "Your father and Knox have a plan. The farm needs modernization, and Knox has the business connections to make it profitable." "What about me? I've been running this place for 20 years. Mom's expression hardened. You're good at the day-to-day work, Rachel, but this is about the future, about building something bigger. I built this. Every irrigation line, every fence repair, every harvest. You maintained it. There's a difference. The words hit like a slap. I stared at my mother, this woman who'd taught me to plant tomatoes and braid my hair, and saw a stranger. So, what happens to me when Knox takes over? You'll always have a place here. Knox will need help managing things. As his employee. As his sister. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. His sister who gets to keep doing all the work while he gets all the credit. Rachel, don't be dramatic. Dramatic? I slammed my hand on the counter. Mom, they're going to auction off our farm in 4 weeks. How is that dramatic? Her composure cracked. We're working on it. Knox has some investors interested. The same investors who are going to fund his last 3 failed businesses. This is different. How? She couldn't answer. We both knew Knox's track record. Every venture started with grand promises and ended with Dad writing checks to cover the losses. Why him? The question came out quieter than I intended. Why is Knox worth risking everything for? But I'm not? Mom set down her glass and looked at me with something that might have been pity. Rachel, honey, you're a good worker, but Knox has vision. He sees possibilities where you see problems. This farm needs someone who can think beyond just keeping things running. I've been thinking beyond that for years. Every improvement, every efficiency upgrade. Those were maintenance issues. Knox is talking about real growth. Real growth. Like the cryptocurrency investment that lost us 30 grand. Like the organic certification that would take 3 years we didn't have. And if his vision fails, if the investors pull out, what then? Mom's jaw tightened. It won't fail. But if it does, then we'll figure something out. No, Mom, then we'll lose everything. The farm, the house, all of it. She turned away from me, staring out the window at the fields I'd spent my life tending. This is Knox's future we're saving, Rachel. You're not losing anything important. The words hung in the air between us like poison. Not losing anything important. 20 years of my life, dismissed in a single sentence. I walked out without another word, leaving her standing in the kitchen with her sweet tea and her delusions. 4 weeks. That's all the time I had to figure out how to save everything they were willing to throw away. I met Paris at the diner on Route 9, the kind of place where the coffee's strong and the conversations stay private. He'd been our farmhand for 3 summers before moving to town and working his way up at First National Bank. Now, he was a loan officer, and if anyone knew the real story behind my family's financial mess, it would be him. You look like hell, Rachel. He slid into the booth across from me, loosening his tie. Feel like it too. Thanks for meeting me. The waitress poured coffee without being asked. Small-town perks. Everyone knew your order by heart. So, Paris said, stirring sugar into his cup, I heard your family's been having some interesting conversations with our loan department. Define interesting. Your dad's called the bank 6 times this week. Panic calls mostly, asking about extensions, payment plans, anything to buy more time. I wrapped my hands around my mug, letting the warmth steady me. How bad is it, really? Paris glanced around the diner, then leaned forward. Bad. The loan's been in default for 3 months. They've been getting grace periods because of your family's history with the bank, but that goodwill's running out fast. What about Knox's investor friends? What about them? Dad keeps saying Knox has people lined up to help. Paris snorted. Rachel, I've seen Knox's credit report. The man couldn't get approved for a gas station credit card, let alone attract serious investors. But the money he's been spending came from the farm loan. Every penny. He pulled out his phone and showed me a photo of what looked like bank statements. Knox has been burning through cash like it's going out of style. Designer clothes, expensive dinners, that BMW lease. Your parents' loan is basically funding his Instagram lifestyle. My stomach clenched. How much is left? Maybe 20 grand, and that's being generous. $20,000 out of $250,000. Gone in 8 months. There's something else, Paris continued. Mason Davidson. He's the primary loan officer handling your family's account. He's been getting pressure from upstairs to move forward with foreclosure. The bank's tired of waiting. Can you talk to him? Maybe. But Rachel, what's your endgame here? Even if we buy you more time, where's the money going to come from? I'd been asking myself the same question for days. My savings account had maybe $15,000 in it. Money I'd scraped together from selling produce at the farmer's market and doing odd jobs for neighbors. It wasn't nearly enough to save the farm, but it might be enough for something else. What if someone else wanted to buy the debt? Paris raised an eyebrow. You mean like a debt collector? I mean like me. He set down his coffee cup hard enough to rattle the saucer. Rachel, that's crazy? Impossible? I was going to say complicated. But yeah, those two. He studied my face. You're serious about this? Dead serious. The bank would sell the debt for maybe 60, 70 cents on the dollar. You're still looking at close to 200 grand. What if I had collateral? What kind of collateral? I pulled out my phone and showed him photos I'd taken that morning. The farm equipment, the tractors, the harvester, the irrigation system. All of it's in good condition, well maintained. What's that worth? Paris scrolled through the images, his expression thoughtful. Maybe 150 if you're lucky. Still leaves you short. But it's a start. Rachel, even if you could pull this off, you realize what you'd be doing to your family. What they're doing to me, you mean? Your parents would lose everything. They're going to lose everything anyway. At least this way, the farm stays in the family. Paris was quiet for a long moment, staring out the window at the parking lot. There might be a way. Mason's been looking for deals that make the bank look good. You know, keeping local families in their homes, that kind of PR bullshit. If we pitched this right. You'd help me? I'd talk to Mason. See if he's interested in a creative solution. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Knox coming home tomorrow for family meeting. Important you're there. I showed Paris the message. Looks like the cavalry's arriving. Or the vultures. The diner door chimed, and I looked up to see Yolanda from the neighboring farm sliding into a booth near the window. She nodded at me with that knowing look small-town gossips perfected. By tomorrow, half the county would know I'd been having secret meetings at the diner. I need to go, I said, dropping a 10 on the table. But, Paris, whatever you can do with Mason, I'd appreciate it. I'll make some calls. But, Rachel, think hard about this. Once you go down this road, there's no coming back. I was already standing. There's no coming back from losing the farm either. The drive home took 20 minutes, but I spent every mile thinking about what Paris had said. No coming back. He was right. If I bought the debt, if I took control of the farm, my relationship with my parents would be over. Knox would never forgive me. I'd be alone. But I'd also be free. I pulled into the driveway just as Knox's BMW rounded the corner, music thumping loud enough to scare the chickens. A blonde woman sat in the passenger seat, taking selfies against the backdrop of our family farm. Knox stepped out wearing a suit that probably cost more than I made in 3 months. The blonde followed, wobbling on heels completely inappropriate for farm ground. "Rachel!" Knox called out, all fake enthusiasm. "Perfect timing. I want you to meet Hallie." Hallie extended a manicured hand. "Knox has told me so much about you. I love what you've done with the rustic aesthetic." Rustic aesthetic. Right. "We need to talk," Knox said, his smile fading. "All of us. Tonight." I looked at his expensive clothes, his expensive girlfriend, his expensive car, and thought about the $20,000 left from the loan that was supposed to save our farm. "Yeah," I said. "We definitely need to talk." The family meeting happened in the living room, with Knox holding court from Dad's recliner like he already owned the place. Hallie perched on the arm of the chair, scrolling through her phone and occasionally taking photos of herself against our vintage farmhouse decor. "So, here's the situation," Knox began, like he was addressing a board meeting. "The farm's in trouble." Dad filled me in on the details. I glanced at my parents. Mom sat rigid on the couch, hands folded. Dad stared at the floor. "The good news is, I've got a solution." Knox leaned forward. "I've been talking to some investors in Chicago. They're interested in converting part of the property into agritourism, wedding venue, corporate retreats, that kind of thing." "Agritourism," I repeated. "It's huge right now. City people love the authentic farm experience. We could charge premium rates for weekend stays, farm-to-table dinners, Instagram-worthy photo shoots." He gestured toward Hallie, who was currently photographing her latte against the backdrop of Mom's quilts. "And the farming part?" "We'd keep some of that for atmosphere. Maybe a small vegetable garden, a few chickens for the guests to interact with." I looked around the room. "This is a working farm, Knox. We've got 200 acres of crops, livestock, equipment. Which is why we need to pivot. Traditional farming isn't profitable anymore, but experiential agriculture, that's where the money is." Dad finally spoke up. "Knox's investors are willing to put up the money to save the farm." "In exchange for what?" "Partnership," Knox said smoothly. "They'd own 60%. I'd manage operations, and Dad would stay on as a consultant. What about me?" Knox's smile didn't reach his eyes. "You'd be great at the day-to-day stuff. Guest relations, maybe some light farm work for the tourists." "Light farm work?" "You know, feeding chickens, showing people around, playing up the whole authentic farmer thing." Hallie looked up from her phone. "Oh, you'd be perfect for that. Very earthy." The room went quiet. I could hear the old grandfather clock ticking in the corner, counting down the seconds until I either exploded or walked away. "Let me get this straight," I said carefully. "Your plan is to turn our family farm into a theme park, sell most of it to strangers, and have me dress up like a farmer for tourists." "It's not a theme park," Knox protested. "It's authentic agricultural tourism. Authentic." I stood up. "Knox, you haven't set foot on this farm for more than a weekend in 10 years. You don't know the difference between wheat and barley, but you want to teach city people about authentic farming?" "I know business. That's what matters." "And I know farming. Doesn't that matter at all?" Dad cleared his throat. "Rachel, honey, Knox has experience with investors and marketing. This kind of venture needs someone who understands the financial side. The financial side! I laughed, but it came out bitter. You mean like how he's already burned through most of the loan money? Knox's face flushed. That was startup capital. Market research, networking events, building relationships, buying a BMW and designer clothes. Image matters in business. Not when you're about to lose the farm. Mom finally spoke. Rachel, we're trying to find a solution here. Knox is offering to help. Help? Mom, his help is what got us into this mess. That's not fair! Knox snapped. I'm trying to save this place. By selling it to strangers and turning it into a tourist trap. By making it profitable for the first time in decades. I turned to Dad. Is this really what you want? To watch strangers take wedding photos in the fields where your grandfather grew corn? Dad's jaw tightened. Sometimes you have to adapt to survive, Rachel. The old ways aren't working anymore. The old ways built this farm. 4 generations of our family. And where has that gotten us? Knox interrupted. Broke and about to lose everything. At least my plan keeps the land in the family. 60% owned by your investors isn't keeping it in the family. It's better than losing it completely. I looked around the room at these people who were supposed to be my family. Mom, who'd rather see the farm turned into a tourist attraction than trust me to run it. Dad, who'd mortgage our legacy for Knox's pipe dreams. And Knox, who saw dollar signs where I saw home. What if there was another option? I said quietly. Like what? Dad asked. What if someone in the family bought the debt from the bank? Knox snorted. With what money? Rachel, you don't have that kind of cash. Maybe I do. The room went dead silent. Hallie even stopped taking selfies. You have $200,000? Mom's voice was barely a whisper. I might be able to get it. Knox leaned forward. How? That's my business. Rachel, Dad said slowly, if you can help save the farm, we'd be grateful. But the land would still need proper management. Someone with business experience. Someone like Knox. The land belongs to a man, Rachel. That's just how it is. There it was. The truth I'd been dancing around my entire life. It didn't matter how hard I worked, how much I sacrificed, how many years I'd poured into this place. In my father's eyes, I would never be worthy of owning it because I wasn't a man. Oh, I see. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. Well, let me see what I can do about getting that money. Rachel, wait. Mom stood up. We should discuss this as a family. Should we? Because it sounds like the family's already made its decision. I headed for the door, but Knox's voice stopped me. Rachel, if you're serious about this, we could work together. You handle the farming side, I handle the business side. Partners. I turned back to look at him. Partners? Like how Dad and I were partners when he put your name on the patents for my irrigation improvements. Knox had the grace to look uncomfortable. That was different. No, Knox, that was exactly the same. I walked out, leaving them to their planning and their schemes. But as I crossed the yard to my truck, I was already making plans of my own. By morning, I'd know if Paris could make this work, and if he could, my family was about to learn what it felt like to be on the outside, looking in. Paris called me at 6 a.m, his voice tight with excitement. Mason's interested. Can you meet us at the bank at 9? I was already dressed and halfway to my truck. I'll be there. First National Bank looked the same as it had when I was a kid depositing birthday money. all marble floors and intimidating wooden desks. Mason Davidson sat behind one of those desks, a thin man in his 40s with the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. "Ms. Rachel, Paris tells me you have an interesting proposition." I slid a folder across his desk. "I want to buy my family's debt." Mason opened the folder, scanning the equipment appraisals and financial statements Natalie had helped me prepare. "This is unconventional, but legal." "Oh, yes, perfectly legal. The bank sells debt all the time, usually to collection agencies, but there's no reason an individual can't purchase it." He looked up. "The question is whether you can secure adequate financing." Paris leaned forward. "Rachel's offering the farm equipment as collateral, plus she's got cash savings. How much cash?" $15,000, I said. Mason's eyebrows rose. "That's not nearly enough for a $250,000 debt." "What if we structured it differently?" Paris suggested. "Rachel takes over the payments, assumes the debt directly. The bank gets a reliable borrower, and the debt stays performing." "The current borrowers are in default." "But Rachel isn't. She's got 20 years of steady income from the farm. No missed payments on anything. Solid credit history." Mason tapped his pen against the desk. "What makes you think you can succeed where your family failed?" "Because I won't be funding my brother's lifestyle." That got a chuckle. "Fair point. But taking on this debt means you'd essentially own the farm. Your parents would lose everything." "They're going to lose everything anyway." Mason studied me for a long moment. "This is personal, isn't it? It's business. The farm needs someone who'll prioritize it over expensive cars and investor meetings." "And your family, they're on board with this?" I met his gaze steadily. "They don't know yet." Paris shifted in his chair. "Mason, the bank wants this debt off their books. Rachel's offering a clean solution. No foreclosure, no auction, no bad publicity." "True." Mason closed the folder. "I'll need to run this by my supervisor, but preliminarily I think we can work something out. The debt transfer would take about 2 weeks to process." My heart hammered against my ribs. 2 weeks? Maybe less if we expedite. But, Ms. Rachel, once this goes through, there's no undoing it. You'd be responsible for the full amount, and the farm would be yours. Your family would have no legal claim to the property." "I understand." We shook hands, and I walked out of the bank feeling like I'd just lit a fuse on a bomb. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, I'd either save everything or destroy my family, forever. The drive home took me past the Hendersons' place, where Yolanda was hanging laundry on the line. She waved, and I could practically see the gossip wheels turning in her head. By noon, half the county would know I'd been at the bank with Paris. I found Mom in the kitchen, making lunch for Knox and Hallie. The smell of fried chicken filled the air, just like every Sunday of my childhood. "How did it go?" she asked without looking up. "How did what go?" "Your meeting about the money. Knox said you might have a way to help." I poured myself a glass of water, buying time. "Still working on it." "Well, don't take too long. Knox's investors want an answer by Friday." "What happens if they don't get one?" Mom finally looked at me, her expression strained. "Then we lose the farm, Rachel. Everything our family built, gone." I wanted to tell her that everything our family built was already gone, mortgaged away for Knox's dreams. Instead, I asked, "Do you remember when we planted the apple orchard?" "Of course. You were 8 years old, insisted on helping with every single tree. You told me those trees would outlive us both. that someday my children would eat apples from trees we planted together. Mom's hands stilled on the cutting board. Rachel. Do you think Knox's investors will keep the orchard? I don't know. But you're willing to risk it. She turned back to her chicken, shoulders tense. Sometimes we don't have choices, honey. We always have choices, Mom. We just don't always like them. Knox appeared in the doorway, phone pressed to his ear. Yeah, I understand the timeline. Friday's not a problem. He hung up and looked at us. That was my lead investor. They're ready to move forward, but they need confirmation by end of week. What kind of confirmation? I asked. Signed agreements, financial commitments, the usual. Dad's already agreed to the terms. What about the bank? They'll need to approve any debt transfer. Knox waved dismissively. That's just paperwork. Once we have investor backing, the bank will play ball. I almost laughed. Knox had no idea what was happening behind the scenes, no clue that his grand plan was about to crumble. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Heard you were at the bank this morning. Everything okay? Small towns. Nothing stayed secret for long. I need to make some calls, I said, heading for the door. Rachel. Knox's voice stopped me. I know this is hard. Change always is. But this is the right move for everyone. Everyone. The farm gets saved. Mom and Dad get to stay in their house. You get to keep doing what you love. Win, win, win. And you get to be the hero. I get to be the solution. There's a difference. I looked at my brother. Really looked at him. Designer jeans, expensive watch, manicured nails that had never touched farm equipment. He genuinely believed he was saving us. Knox, can I ask you something? Sure. When's the last time you actually worked on this farm? Not visited, not planned, but worked. He frowned. I don't see how that's relevant. Humor me. I help when I'm here. That's not what I asked. Knox's jaw tightened. Rachel, physical labor isn't the only way to contribute to a family business. But it's the foundation everything else is built on. Not anymore. This is the 21st century. Success comes from vision and strategy, not just sweat. I nodded slowly. You're right. Vision and strategy are important. Knox smiled, thinking he'd won the argument. That's why I've got my own plan in motion. His smile faltered. What kind of plan? The kind that doesn't involve selling our family's legacy to strangers. I walked out before he could respond, leaving him standing in the kitchen with his confusion and his expensive clothes. 2 weeks. In 2 weeks, Knox would learn that vision and strategy cut both ways. The call came on Thursday morning while I was fixing a broken gate hinge. Paris sounded breathless, like he'd been running. It's done. The debt transfer went through. Rachel, you officially own your family's mortgage. I set down my wrench, hands shaking. Already? You said 2 weeks. Mason expedited it. The bank wanted this off their books fast. You've got the paperwork coming by courier this afternoon. What about my family? Do they know? Not yet. The bank will notify them tomorrow that their debt has been sold to a private party. They won't know it's you unless you tell them. I hung up and stared at the gate I'd been repairing. The same gate I'd fixed a dozen times over the years, because Dad never wanted to spend money on a new one. Now, it was my gate, my farm, my responsibility. The courier arrived at 3 o'clock with a thick envelope of legal documents. I spread them across my kitchen table, reading every word twice. There it was in black and white. Rachel Steele, creditor. My parents owed me $247,000, and I had the legal right to foreclose if they couldn't pay. My phone started ringing at 4:30. Dad's number. Rachel, we need you to come to the house right now. There's been a development. What kind of development? Just come, please. I found them in the living room. Mom, Dad, and Knox huddled around a stack of papers like they were studying battle plans. Hallie was nowhere to be seen. There you are. Knox looked up, his face pale. We've got a problem. The bank sold our debt to some private investor. What does that mean? Dad held up an official-looking letter. It means we're not dealing with First National anymore. Some stranger owns our mortgage now, and they want immediate payment or they'll foreclose. How immediate? 30 days, Mom whispered. Knox slammed his hand on the coffee table. This is exactly what I was trying to prevent. Now we're at the mercy of some vulture capitalist who probably bought our debt for pennies on the dollar. Did the bank say who bought it? They won't tell us, Dad said. Privacy laws or some bullshit. All we know is it's a private party, not a company. I sat down in the chair across from them, trying to keep my expression neutral. What about your investors? Knox's face darkened. They pulled out, said the debt transfer changed the risk profile too much. Apparently, private creditors are less predictable than banks. So, what's the plan now? That's why we called you, Mom said. You mentioned you might be able to get money. We're hoping. You're hoping I'll bail you out. We're hoping you'll help save the family farm, Dad corrected. I looked around the room at their desperate faces. 3 people who'd spent years dismissing me, diminishing me, treating me like hired help. Now, they needed me. How much help are we talking about? The full amount, Knox said. $247,000. That's a lot of money. Rachel, please. Mom's voice cracked. You're our only hope. What would I get in return? The question hung in the air. Dad shifted uncomfortably. What do you mean? He asked. I mean, if I pay off a $250,000 debt, what's my stake in the farm? Knox and Dad exchanged glances. We'd work something out, Dad said vaguely. Work what out, exactly? You'd be a partner, Knox offered. Junior partner, but still. Junior partner. I repeated the words slowly. In the farm, I've been running for 20 years. Rachel, you have to understand, there are legal considerations. Like what? Dad cleared his throat. Like the fact that I'm still the legal owner. The farm's been in our family for 4 generations, passed down from father to son. That's how these things work. So, even if I pay the debt, Knox would still inherit everything. Eventually, yes, but you'd have security, a guaranteed place here. I stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the fields I'd planted, the equipment I'd maintained, the life I'd built with my own hands. What if the new creditor won't negotiate? Then we lose everything, Mom said quietly, and Knox's backup plans. There are no backup plans, Knox admitted. The investors were our only shot. I turned back to face them. So you need me to save the farm, but you won't give me any real ownership in return. Rachel, be reasonable, Dad said. You're asking us to change generations of tradition. I'm asking you to treat me like family instead of hired help. You are family, Mom protested. Then act like it. The room fell silent. Outside I could hear the chickens clucking in their coop, the same sound that had been the soundtrack of my childhood. There might be another option, I said finally. All three of them leaned forward. What if I talked to the new creditor? Tried to negotiate on your behalf? Hope flickered in Dad's eyes. You'd do that? I could try, but I'd need full disclosure about the farm's finances. No more secrets, no more hidden debts. Of course, Knox said quickly. Whatever you need. And I'd need authority to make decisions. If I'm negotiating for the family, I need to be able to speak for the family. Dad nodded. That makes sense. Good. I picked up my jacket. Give me a few days to reach out to some contacts, see what I can find out about this new creditor. Rachel. Mom stood up, tears in her eyes. Thank you. I know we haven't always... Don't thank me yet, Mom. I haven't done anything. But as I walked out to my truck, I knew that wasn't true. I'd already done everything. The question now was whether I had the courage to see it through. My phone buzzed with a text from Natalie. Heard about the debt transfer. You ready for this? I typed back. Ready as I'll ever be. Tomorrow, I'd tell them the truth. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tonight, I was still just Rachel, the daughter who fixed gates and fed chickens and dreamed of something more. Tomorrow, I'd be the woman who owned it all. I called the family meeting for Saturday morning. Mom made coffee and set out her good china, like we were having a social visit instead of what was about to be the most devastating conversation of their lives. Natalie arrived first, carrying a briefcase and wearing her courtroom face. Knox looked confused when she walked in. Why is your lawyer here? You'll see. Dad settled into his recliner, Mom perched on the edge of the couch, and Knox sprawled in the chair by the window. They all looked expectant, hopeful, even. They thought I was here to save them. I have news about your creditor, I began. Good news, I hope, Dad said. I pulled the mortgage documents from my bag and set them on the coffee table. I found out who bought your debt. Knox leaned forward. Who is it? Some investment firm? No. I met his eyes. It's me. The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's coffee cup rattled against its saucer as she set it down. What do you mean? It's you! Dad's voice was barely a whisper. I mean, I bought your mortgage from First National Bank. I own your debt. All of it. Knox shot to his feet. That's impossible. You don't have that kind of money. I used the farm equipment as collateral and took out my own loan. The bank was happy to transfer the debt to someone with a better payment history. You can't do this, Knox sputtered. This is our family's farm. No, Knox. It's my farm now. Legally, officially, completely mine. Mom made a sound like a wounded animal. Rachel, honey, this has to be some kind of mistake. It's not a mistake, Mom. It's 20 years in the making. Dad struggled to his feet, his face red with rage. You scheming little bitch! How dare you? How dare I what? Save the farm from foreclosure? Keep it in the family? Prevent you from losing everything to your son's stupidity? This is theft. No, Dad. Theft is what you did to me. Taking out a mortgage against land I've worked my entire adult life without telling me. Using that money to fund Knox's lifestyle while I scraped by on farmers' market earnings. Putting Knox's name on patents for improvements I designed. That's theft. Knox was pacing now, running his hands through his hair. Rachel, we can work this out. We're family. Are we? Because yesterday you were ready to sell 60% of this place to strangers. Today you're calling me family because I hold the power. That's different. How? How is it different? Because you're my sister. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. I've been your sister for 33 years, Knox. When did that ever matter before? Mom finally found her voice. Rachel, please, we can fix this. We can make things right. How, Mom? By giving me a junior partnership in my own farm. By letting me keep doing all the work while Knox takes all the credit. We'll change the will, Dad said desperately. We'll make sure you inherit. When? When you die in 20 years? 30? I'm supposed to wait until I'm 60 to own what I've already earned? Natalie cleared her throat. If I may, the legal situation is quite clear. Rachel now holds the mortgage on this property. She has the right to foreclose at any time, or she can choose to work out payment arrangements with the current residents. Residents? Knox's voice cracked. We're not residents. We're the owners. Actually, you're not, Natalie said calmly. Your parents are the deed holders, but they owe Rachel $247,000. If they can't pay, she can foreclose and take possession. Dad sank back into his chair. You'd really do this to us? Your own family? You did it to yourselves. Every time you chose Knox over me. Every time you dismissed my ideas and took credit for my work. Every time you made it clear that I was good enough to labor, but not good enough to lead. That's not... Mom started. It's exactly true, and you know it. Remember what you told me last week, Mom? That I wasn't losing anything important? Well, now you get to find out what important really means. Knox stopped pacing and turned to face me. What do you want? Money? We'll pay you back. With what money, Knox? You've got maybe $20,000 left from the original loan. The rest went to your BMW, your clothes, your girlfriend's shopping sprees. I was building connections. You were building a fantasy, and now the bills come due. Dad's voice was hollow. So, what happens now? I looked around the room at these people who'd shaped my entire life, who'd taught me to work hard and dream small, who'd never once asked what I wanted for my own future. Now you have 30 days to find another place to live. Mom gasped. Rachel, no, this is our home. It was your home. You mortgaged it away, remember? You chose to risk everything for Knox's pipe dreams. We'll fight this, Knox said, his voice shaking with rage. We'll get lawyers, contest the sale. Go ahead, Natalie said. The debt transfer is completely legal. Rachel followed all proper procedures. You planned this, Dad accused. You've been planning this for months. I've been planning this for 20 years, Dad. Every time you told me the land belongs to a man, every time you made it clear that I'd never be good enough, you taught me that the only way to get what you deserve is to take it. Knox lunged toward me, but Natalie stepped between us. I wouldn't recommend that, Knox. Assault won't help your situation. You're destroying our family, Mom sobbed. No, Mom. I'm saving what's left of it. The farm will stay in the family. My family. The land will be worked by someone who loves it, not sold off to investors or turned into a tourist trap. I stood up, gathering my papers. You have until the end of the month. After that, I'll have the sheriff escort you off the property. Rachel, please. Dad's voice broke. We're sorry. We made mistakes, but we can fix this. Some mistakes can't be fixed, Dad. Some betrayals cut too deep. I walked toward the door, but Mom's voice stopped me. Where are we supposed to go? I turned back one last time. I don't know, Mom, but I guess you'll figure something out. After all, you're not losing anything important, right? The sound of Mom's crying followed me out to my truck, but I didn't look back. I'd spent 20 years looking back, wondering what I could have done differently, how I could have earned their respect. Now I was looking forward, toward a future where the land I loved would finally, truly be mine, even if it meant losing everything else. The moving truck pulled away on a Tuesday morning, taking the last of my parents' belongings to the rental house they'd found across town. I watched from the kitchen window as Knox loaded his BMW with whatever wouldn't fit in the truck. He didn't look back at the house, didn't say goodbye to the fields where we'd played as children. Mom had tried one last time the night before, standing in my doorway with red-rimmed eyes. "Rachel, honey, it doesn't have to be this way." "Yes, it does. We could work together, share the farm. I could help with the garden, the chickens." "Like you helped when you told me I wasn't losing anything important." She'd left without another word. Now the house was mine, empty and echoing. I walked through the rooms, seeing them with new eyes. The living room where Knox had held court, planning to sell our legacy. The kitchen where Mom had dismissed my concerns while frying chicken for the son who mattered more. Dad's office, where I'd found the foreclosure notice that started everything. My phone rang. Paris. "How are you holding up?" "I'm fine." "Liar? Want some company?" "Actually, yeah." He arrived 20 minutes later with a 6-pack of beer and a bag of takeout Chinese food. We sat on the front porch, eating lo mein and watching the sun set over my fields. "Any regrets?" he asked. "About what?" "Come on, Rachel. You just evicted your entire family. That's got to mess with your head." I thought about it. Really thought about it. "You know what messes with my head? The fact that I feel guilty for taking what was already Chiutium." "That's normal. They're still your family, are they? Because family doesn't mortgage your life's work to fund someone else's dreams. Family doesn't tell you that you're not losing anything important when they're about to take everything you've built." Paris nodded slowly. "Fair point." "I gave them 20 years, Paris. 20 years of my life, my sweat, my ideas, and they were ready to hand it all over to Knox without a second thought." "So what now? You going to run this place solo?" "For now. Maybe hire some seasonal help during harvest." "And your family?" I shrugged. "What about them?" "You really think you'll never speak to them again?" Before I could answer, headlights swept across the driveway. A familiar pickup truck pulled up. Yolanda from next door. She climbed out carrying a casserole dish. "Figured you might need some real food," she said, settling onto the porch steps. "Chinese is fine, but you need proper nutrition after a day like today." "Thanks, Yolanda." She studied my face in the porch light. "You look like hell, girl." "Feel like it too." "Good. Shows you're human." She set the casserole on the step between us. "You know, half the county thinks you're a cold-hearted bitch." "And the other half?" "Thinks it's about damn time someone put Larry in his place." Paris choked on his beer. "Seriously? Oh, honey, everyone knew what was happening here. Rachel working herself to death while Knox played big shot in the city. Larry taking credit for everything she did. We all saw it." "Then why didn't anyone say anything?" Yolanda gave him a look. "Because it wasn't our business, but that doesn't mean we didn't notice." She turned to me. "Your grandmother would be proud, you know." "Grandma? She was the one who really ran this farm back in the day. Your grandfather got the credit, but she made all the decisions. Used to tell me she hoped someday a woman would officially own this land." I felt tears prick my eyes. "She never said that to me." "Course not. She was from a different generation. But she saw how hard you worked, how much you loved this place. She knew. We sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the crickets and the distant sound of cattle settling for the night. "Rachel," Yolanda said eventually, "you did the right thing. Doesn't make it easy, but it was right." "Even if it means losing my family?" "Honey, you didn't lose your family. You lost people who were using you. There's a difference." My phone buzzed with a text. "Unknown number. Rachel, this is Martina. Heard what happened. If you need anything, call me. What you did took guts. Your cousin." I showed the message to Paris and Yolanda. "See?" Yolanda smiled. "Family isn't just blood. It's the people who see your worth and stick around." "Speaking of sticking around," Paris said, "I should probably head home. Early meeting tomorrow." "Thanks for coming by." "Any time. And Rachel, you're going to be fine. Better than fine." After they left, I walked out to the apple orchard Mom and I had planted when I was 8. The trees were mature now, heavy with fruit ready for harvest. I picked an apple and bit into it, tasting the sweetness we'd cultivated together all those years ago. My phone rang, Knox's number. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. Dad this time. Voicemail. Then Mom. I turned off the phone and walked back to the house. My house, carrying Yolanda's casserole and the apple from my orchard. Tomorrow I'd start planning the harvest. Maybe look into that community-supported agriculture program I'd been researching. The farm had potential beyond anything Knox had imagined. But tonight, I sat in my kitchen and ate homemade lasagna while the grandfather clock ticked in the corner, counting down the seconds of my new life. The house felt different now. Not empty, but spacious. Full of possibility. Outside, the harvest moon rose over fields that finally, officially, belonged to the woman who'd always worked them. And for the first time in 20 years, that felt like enough.